public service broadcasters, of course, have the ambition, and rightly so, to be the beacons of truth, the beacons of trust, to be the source where people turn to for reliable news and information. And part of this trust relationship between the public broadcasters and individuals is, of course, first of all, that public broadcasters are exemplary in how they ensure that individuals have control over their personal data.
Well, I think actually it could be a competitive, differentiator if you really respect privacy and really provide options and choice and control to individuals.
Educate people and show what happens actually on the internet to them as a person in terms of how they are tracked, how they are analyzed, how they, their personal data is auctioned in real time to advertisers.
The EBU is trying to understand how it can mobilize big data analytics to establish a better understanding with its public. At the same time, that's going to mean that the public is going to realize that the members of the EBU are going to collect more data about themselves. Now, if they are perceived to be using that responsibly, that's going to increase trust. If they are perceived simply to be just another way of having their movements watched so that they can be better exploited as consumers, then that won't necessarily wash down so well. Privacy very often comes along as a bolt-on idea, as an afterthought, and it shouldn't be that way. And which is why it requires discipline, why it requires a culture change in the way we go around engineering in order to try and think of things by design.
Yeah, I don't think that the GDPR requires structural changes. It's not a revolution, it's an evolution of tried and tested good principles of data protection, which we have had in Europe since decades. I think it will drive change because there will be a market, and one can see this already, not only of consultancy and good legal advice, but also technology, a market for technology which is privacy friendly. And the next step is, of course, that there will be a market for technology which helps to control compliance, and a market which empowers individuals, but also which makes it easier for controllers of data to demonstrate and document that they have actually complied with the law.
In the end, there's only a few things that individuals are interested in. And that is, are you going to sell my data? Are you going to share it with third parties? Can I actually have control over it by deleting it after you have had it for a while?
The normal consumer, the normal citizen, should not be expected to have the competence in media techniques, in data collections, to be able to decide for himself or herself that the product is safe, which of course has huge implications for the concept of consent. Is consent an adequate safeguard? And in many cases we can say no.
Under the GDPR, it has been made very clear that consent should be independent of the offering of the services. So you can't block access to your services if individuals do not give consent. You can't have a cookie wall, you can't have. So I think actually that rule applies now already, but nobody adheres to it. But with the higher fines and new enforcement powers, it may well be that they're going to make a real effort to put an end to that.
You need to be very careful in order to implement the principles of privacy by design and privacy by default in order to properly engineer privacy into your final systems and product.
I would say that startups play a very important role in this new privacy by design, or one can call it human rights, rule of law and democracy by design technologies. And I would say every big player, including the big public broadcasters, are well advised not only to look around them and work with startups which are already there, but also to nurture the scene and to provide opportunities for young people and older people also to take initiative and develop new technologies which serve these basic values of our society.
When you look at the motor car first developed in the 1870s, it was only actually in the 1970s that we started to put in things like safety belts and eventually crash zones. So look at crumple zones as being the equivalent of privacy by design, and eventually airbags and side impact systems and side air curtains and all the safety devices we've put in. So to a certain extent, I compare that the internet is also like a motor car. It's very much work in progress, and privacy on the internet, privacy gathered by media companies, is work in progress and will continue to be work in progress for some time. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't work upon it. It just means that we've got to be patient when we look at all the imperfections.
I'm not interested to know what is below the hood of my car. I just want to be driving safely, and if there's something wrong, I want to bring it back and have somewhere. So my point is, I think a privacy statement actually doesn't inspire trust at all. The moment you start reading, you're actually getting worried. That is basically what it is at the moment. So the public broadcasting companies, in my opinion, really need to rethink what their differentiator, where they can differentiate from the commercial media companies and really inspire trust. And that is not by posting lengthy privacy policies.
Of course, our data protection regulation is an opportunity in the global market, because European companies now, when marketing their goods and services, they can not only rely on their own mark and make promises to their customers in terms of how well they deal with personal data in the good European tradition in comparison to other parts of the world, how data is dealt with there, but they will in addition be able to say, look, if we don't keep our promises, in Europe there's a system where we are strictly controlled and could get very high sanctions, up to 4% of our turnover, so you can take our promise that your personal data will be safe with us and will be treated correctly, and that you keep control of your personal data as individuals, you can take this promise serious. So I think that is certainly the opportunity for European industry with this regulation in place.
It does set new standards. Since it sets them in Europe, and since there are a number of companies outside Europe which would like to also have part of the European business, they are bound to also try to comply with those standards, which means that to a certain extent it is setting standards globally.